I welcome you to the Messiah Revelation channel, an end time prophetic channel. Today we are looking at two events. They are prophetic events that will come in the end times, and they will manifest shortly. The times of the Gentiles and the fullness of the Gentiles. These are two separate events. They are two separate doctrines in the Bible. And so we are going over the two. And I also use this opportunity to answer a question. Will all Israel be saved? Somebody going by the tag name Setmashi Court. I don't know whether I'm saying your tag name right. I promise that I will answer your question. Specifically, you wanted me to interpret Romans 11 verse 25 regarding the fullness of the Gentiles. And you also asked a question, why is it that all Israel will not be saved, even though Paul writings state that all Israel will be saved? We'll go into that question. First of all, let's look at the times of the Gentiles. The doctrine, the times of the Gentiles, the prophecy about the times of the Gentiles is specific to Luke 21, verse 24. The children of Jacob, 1, will fall by the edge of the sword. 2, they will be taken captive to all nations. And 3, Jerusalem will be trodden down of Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And so the times of the Gentiles discussed in Luke 21 verse 24 is an exposition by the Messiah himself, giving an outline of what will happen to the children of Jacob. They going through a tribulation in terms of falling under the sword of the Romans, and they being taken captive into all nations in the world, and Jerusalem, the holy city, falling to the hands of Gentiles. And the Gentiles will dominate the city. They will trample down upon the city, and they will defile the city until an appointed time. And that is what is prophetically considered as the times of the Gentiles. And the question we ask is, when will the times of the Gentiles end? The domination of the children of Jacob by the Gentiles, the defeat of the children of Jacob under the sword by the Gentiles, and the holy city being trampled down by the Gentiles. When will that event occur? And when we look at history, we know that the prophecy, the times of the Gentiles, was fulfilled in AD 70, when the holy city Jerusalem was invaded by the Gentile Romans, and the children of Jacob, they fell under the sword of Rome. And if you look at archaeological records, you will see that the children of Judah, they defended the city Masada, but it fell under the sword of Rome. And archaeological records show that those who defended the city, there were Negroes, there were black men, black women, and it shows that the children of Judah, of course, the Hebrews, they are black men, they are black women. The prophecy is partially fulfilled because Jerusalem was destroyed by Gentile Rome AD 70, and the children of Judah, they were scattered from Babylon to Timbuktu, and from that locations, they were sent on slave ships to the four corners of the earth. And so when you talk about the transatlantic slave trade, you talk about the trans-Saharan slave trade, you talk about the Arab slave trade, and you talk about all the captivities, we are talking about partial fulfillment of the prophecy about the time of the Gentiles articulated in Luke 21, verse 24. Has the prophecy been totally fulfilled? Has it been fulfilled? Luke 21, verse 24, the times of the Gentiles. I was watching a video, and the presenter was Pastor John Hagee, very famous in America. I believe he's in San Antonio. And he said that the times of the Gentiles came to an end in 1967. And his argument is that in 1967, Jerusalem was captured by the Jews when they founded the Jewish state in 1948. And so Jerusalem then went out of the hands of Gentiles, and it came to the hands of the Jews. So to him, that is an indication that the times of the Gentiles spoken of in Luke 21:24 ended in 1967 with the capture of Jerusalem by the Jews. And I beg to differ from Pastor John Hagee because even after 1967, the city Jerusalem is still being occupied by Gentiles. They are defiling the city, the holy city Jerusalem. They are hosting LGBT flag in the holy city in Jerusalem. The warships of Gentile nations are around the holy city, and Jerusalem is being trodden down of Gentiles, even at the time of making the video. And it will not end until the future when the Messiah comes. And there's a scripture support for my assertion when we go to Revelation chapter 11, verse 2. We read for the record where the Apostle John was asked not to measure the temple, the court belonging to the Gentiles. And the scripture in Revelation chapter 11, verse 2 reads, "The court which is without the temple leave out and measure not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months." And so the holy city Jerusalem will still be trodden down of Gentiles, and the Apostle John was asked not to measure the court of the Gentiles in the temple, and Apostle John was told in Revelation that the holy city will be trodden down of Gentiles for 42 months, 3.5 years. And the prophecy relates to the desecration of the holy city and the continued trampling down of the holy city by Gentiles and under the Antichrist. And the time of the Gentiles will end when the Messiah comes in, because it is the Messiah who will defeat the Antichrist and drive away the armies of the Gentiles who will encompass the holy city, Jerusalem. And so that is a short discussion on the times of the Gentiles, the end of the domination of the Gentiles, and domination over the Hebrews, domination through psychological warfare, domination through economic subjugation, and domination through persecution, through slavery and captivity, and domination through the theft of the identity of the Hebrews. And so I'm not surprised that Pastor John Hagee said the times of the Gentiles ended, because he assumed that those who occupy the holy city now, the 1948 state, constitutes the true children of Jacob. And he wrongly assumes that when the Jewish state captured Jerusalem in 1967, that was the end of the Gentiles. And I'm surprised because Pastor Hagee, Pastor John Hagee, who has written a prophecy book, should know that the times of the Gentiles will continue, and it will continue even up to the time when the holy city will be trampled down for 42 months by the Antichrist, and that time has not come yet. Let's go to the fullness of the Gentiles. The Bible talks about the fullness of the Gentiles, and that event is discussed in the book of Romans chapter 11, verse 25. So I'm going straight to answer the question posed by the member who made a request for me to interpret Romans 11, verse 25. We are reading it for the record. For I will not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceit, that blindness in part is happening to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles become. Blindness will happen to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles come. So, what is blindness to Israel? Blindness to Israel involves Israel rejecting the Messiah, and it involves Israel not being aware of who they are, and Israel not um, accepting the Messiah. As we are aware, Jerusalem was destroyed because Israel did not accept the Messiah. They had unbelief in the Messiah, and Jerusalem was destroyed, as the Messiah said. And the blindness, the unbelief, and disobedience on the part of the Hebrews will continue. It will continue until a time when the fullness of the Gentiles comes in. And when Paul talks about the fullness of the Gentiles, Paul is talking about a salvation of the Gentiles, because of the disobedience of the Hebrews, and the Lord paved the way of salvation to the Gentiles. And Paul asked a question: if Israel diminished and that resulted in salvation of the Gentiles, what will happen to the Gentiles when Israel is fully accepted by the Lord? And so the blindness of the Gentiles, the rejection of the Messiah, resulted in the Lord opening the way to the Gentiles. So the fullness of the Gentiles refers to a time when a number of Gentiles will be saved by the Lord, and they will be saved because when Israel became disobedient and rejected the Messiah, and when they had unbelief in the Messiah, the Lord allowed a way for the Gentiles to come in to make the Israelites jealous. It's written in the Bible, in the book of Romans. And Paul talks about the salvation of the Israelites in Romans chapter 11, verse 26. And so all Israel shall be saved. As is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away the ungodliness of Jacob. And so it's true that Paul talks about all Israel will be saved. And it is found in Romans 11, verse 26. The question we are asking prophetically is that, will all Israel be saved? Even though it is written in Romans 11, verse 26, that all Israel will be saved. And I believe that Paul is talking about a remnant, because if you look at Romans 11, and the Bible, I'm using King James Version, the heading for Romans 11 is Remnant of Israel. And in chapter 11 of Romans, Paul is writing about a remnant of Israel. It's not talking about all Israel. Paul said that it is not all who call themselves Israel are of Israel. And Paul in Romans 11 is talking about a remnant. Why do I say that? Because if you read Romans 11, verse 5, Paul specifically talks about it. Even so, then, at this present time also, there is a remnant according to the election of grace. And so Paul specifically uses the code, the remnant. Who is a remnant? A remnant is not all Israel. A remnant is a residue. And throughout the history of the Israelites, the Lord has saved the remnant of Israel. And in the last days, even the prophet Isaiah talks about it. The Messiah will gather the remnant, the outcasts of Israel, and the dispersed of Judah from all the four corners of the earth. And so the blindness of Israel, the Hebrews, refers to the rebellion against the Messiah. It refers to the unbelief that the Hebrews had in the Messiah. And as a result of the unbelief, as a result of the rebellion, salvation comes to Gentiles to provoke the Israelites to jealousy. And that is the writing of Apostle Paul in Romans 11, verse 11. And the writings of Apostle Paul shows that Gentiles did not believe in God, but they got mercy from God because of unbelief of the Israelites. And so the blindness of Israel resulted in the Lord saving the Gentiles. The Gentiles will come in, and that will be a time when the Messiah comes. When the Messiah comes, that will end the fullness of the Gentiles. So the times of the Gentiles will be a time when the domination of Gentiles over Israel will end. And the fullness of the Gentiles also refers to a time when the number of Gentiles that will be saved as a result of the Israelites living in unbelief, and it will come to an end. Because at that time, the Apostle Paul is saying that Israel will be saved. And so when Apostle Paul talks about all Israel will be saved in Romans 11, verse 26, I don't believe he's talking about all Israel being saved. And we have to read the whole book, the book of Romans, in order to understand the writings of Paul. And not only that, we also have to read other books written by Paul to understand Paul's gospel regarding the Gentiles, because Paul was the apostle unto the Gentiles. The question we are asking, all Israel shall be saved, is stated in Romans chapter 11, verse 26. Does it mean that every Tom, Dick, and Harry who is an Israelite, who is a Hebrew Israelite, will be saved? And to answer the question, we can look at the other writings of Paul, and I'll refer you to Galatians chapter 5, verses 19 to 21. Paul talks about the works of the flesh and talks about several sins and abominations. And Paul has warned in Galatians 5, verse 19 to 21, anyone who engages in these things shall not inherit the kingdom of heaven. And Paul is writing, and he is making it clear that the kingdom of heaven is not automatic, and not even to the Israelites, but the remnant that overcomes, the remnant will be saved. And so when all Israel will be saved is used in Romans 11, verse 26, you must understand that Paul in Romans 11 is talking about a remnant of the Hebrews. We also have to look at the writings of Paul, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9. And that is a list of classes of people who will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Of course, it includes both Gentiles and Hebrews. And so we need to understand that salvation is not automatic to every Gentile. Salvation is not automatic to every Hebrew Israelite. The remnant of Israel will be saved. The Lord has always saved the remnant. And Paul even refers to the case of the prophet Elijah, when Elijah thought that he was the only person left because all the Israelites, they had fallen into idolatry. And the Lord told Elijah that he has a remnant, 7,000 Hebrews who have not bowed down to Baal. And so the Lord has a remnant, and the Lord has always saved a remnant. And regardless of what the Gentiles would do to the Hebrews, whether through subjugation, whether through slavery and slave trade, whether through persecution, genocide, whatever, economic domination, and the trampling down of the holy city Jerusalem by Gentiles, the Lord will always save a remnant, and the remnant will be saved to inherit the promises that the Lord has made to the children of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And so, in conclusion, I will say that a time is come when the time of the Gentiles will be fulfilled, because Jerusalem will no longer be trodden down of Gentiles. And at the time of making this video, you know that the Gentiles are under judgment, and the judgment of the Gentiles has begun. You know what is happening to Gentile Europe and what is happening even to Gentile United States. But the judgment on the Gentiles will continue, and the judgment on the Gentiles will come to the holy city Jerusalem, because the Gentiles who will be treading down on the holy city, and their time will come to an end, but not yet. They are given the time, a short time, a prophetic time, to trample on the holy city for a prophetic time of 42 months, 3.5 years, in Revelation 11, verse 2, and until the Messiah comes, and the Gentiles will be finally driven out of the holy city, because that is not their place. It's a holy city reserved for the Messiah and the Hebrew Israelites, who will inherit the land promised to the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But for the fullness of the Gentiles, here we are talking about unbelief and rebellion of the Hebrews that allowed the Lord to graft in the Gentiles into the branch, the natural branch. And the Lord is saying that the fullness of the Gentiles has a divine time, and because the blindness of the Hebrew Israelites, the rebellion of the Hebrew Israelites, the unbelief of the Hebrew Israelites will come to an end. And luckily, the awakening is going over the world, and a number of Hebrew Israelites, they are being awakened. They are accepting the Messiah. They are accepting the commandments of God, and and they are worshiping the Messiah, and they are doing the right thing, and their unbelief will come to an end, because it's decreed by the Holy God that the blindness of Israel will come, and it will come when the fullness of the Gentiles has ended. And the fullness of the Gentiles refers to the coming salvation of the Hebrew Israelites, who, because of their unbelief, gave a door of salvation to the Gentiles. That doesn't mean that the Lord has rejected his chosen people, the Hebrew Israelites, but Paul is saying that it's a mystery that there will be a blindness of the Hebrews until the fullness of the Gentiles be fulfilled. A time when Gentiles, as a result of the blindness, the rejection and rebellion of the Hebrew Israelites, were given opportunity to be grafted into the natural branches belonging to the children of God, the Hebrew Israelites who are scattered all over the world. Thank you very much for my exposition, listening to my exposition on the times of the Gentiles. and the fullness of the Gentiles. They are referring to two separate doctrines, and they are separate doctrines articulated in Luke 21:24 and Romans 11, verse 25. Thank you for watching this video. This is Messiah Revelation Ministry. Thank you very much.